I still remember the night she laughed at our marriage, that night at the most elegant restaurant where every table glittered with wealth and pretension, where her voice sliced through the air like a blade, calling me a failure, mocking my dreams, and humiliating me in front of everyone I once thought mattered. The sting of her words burned in my chest, making every heartbeat ache as though my heart itself wanted to shatter, yet deep inside, a seed of fire was planted. A fire that would not die. A silent vow that one day she would see the man she ridiculed rise, untouchable and undeniable. 4 years, I vanished from her life, but I never vanished from my own resolve. I built from nothing, every sleepless night and every sacrifice sharpening me, crafting an empire on the ashes of her contempt, mastering wealth, influence, and power quietly, invisibly, until my name carried weight she could never imagine, until I became the kind of man whose shadow alone could make her knees tremble. And now, years later, standing in that same city she once believed I would never reach, I watched her across the room, surrounded by laughter and expensive champagne, her smile still dazzling but now trembling imperceptibly, unaware that tonight, her world would crumble in ways she could never escape. I approached her slowly, deliberately, letting the seconds stretch, letting the memories of her cruel words echo in my mind and in hers, until her eyes met mine, and I saw recognition, shock, and fear flicker across her perfect face, the first cracks appearing in the facade she spent years constructing. I let the silence stretch, feeling her unease like a physical weight, knowing she had no idea what was about to unravel, no idea that the empire I built, the wealth, the power, the secrets I had collected meticulously, were all instruments of revelation, waiting to dismantle the life she had thought untouchable. When the moment came, I didn't even need to speak. My associate, whom she trusted blindly, handed her a tablet displaying everything she had hidden. Messages she thought were private, betrayal she believed secret, confession she hoped I would never find, every lie, every hidden desire, every reckless decision laid bare before her eyes, exploding her carefully curated world like a storm she could neither control nor escape. Her hands shook violently as she tried to hold her glass, spilling wine. Like blood on her dress, a perfect metaphor for the life she had tainted with her lies. And for the first time, the laughter around her stuttered, paused, died, leaving her alone in the eye of the storm, facing a truth so raw and devastating that years of arrogance and mockery could not shield her from it. I watched, silent, savoring the slow unraveling, feeling neither glee nor cruelty, only the cold satisfaction that comes from watching justice unfold without words, as her empire of deception collapsed, one secret at a time, her breath catching in terror as every lie, every betrayal she had buried, now screamed at her from the glowing screen. The friends who once adored her stared in disbelief, whispering, realizing that the perfect woman they knew had been living a carefully constructed illusion, and that I, the man they had thought weak, mocked, and defeated, was the one orchestrating the end of her world with precision, patience, and undeniable inevitability. Her eyes met mine again, this time filled with desperation, regret, and the haunting realization that the man she mocked had become the force of reckoning she could not escape, that the years she had spent belittling me had only fueled the man standing before her, a man whose rise was written in the currency of her own underestimation, and whose silence was louder than any scream she could utter. She tried to speak, tried to salvage the shards of her dignity, but the tablet, the evidence, the empire I had built, all of it spoke louder than her trembling lips, revealing everything she feared. Her lies, her deceit, her betrayal, all laid bare, unstoppable and irrevocable, leaving her stripped of the power she thought she wielded, leaving her alone, trembling, gray with rage and humiliation, broken in a way she could never have imagined in her wildest nightmares. I turned and walked away then, not with vindictive glee but with the quiet triumph of a man who had endured, who had risen from the ashes of humiliation and heartbreak, leaving behind a woman who had once mocked him to face the ruin of everything she held dear, watching as tears streaked silently down her face, the sparkle of her jewels doing nothing to mask the defeat in her eyes. And I realized in that moment that the sweetest victory is not shouted or flaunted. It is the calm certainty that the past has been paid back, that the seeds of humiliation she planted grew instead into a forest of strength and power that she could never penetrate, that the man she called a loser had become her reckoning, her nightmare, her silent tormentor, and as I disappeared into the night, the city lights reflecting my shadow, I knew she would never laugh at me again, that she would carry the weight of that night forever, haunted by the knowledge that the man she once scorned had turned every insult into an empire, every laugh into a lesson, and every heartbreak into a force too powerful, too unstoppable, and too absolute for her to ever recover from. And I felt no joy, no vengeance, only the quiet, unshakable satisfaction of a heart that had endured and a soul that had risen, leaving behind the ruins of the life she thought she controlled. And as I vanished into the dark streets, I knew the memory of that dinner, That mockery, and that empire would haunt her endlessly, a silent echo of every mistake she had ever made, every word she had ever spoken, and every cruel laugh she had ever directed at the man who would one day return to redefine her world in ways she could never have imagined.